Several of Superman's more popular villains tend to act as foils to his personality, taking one of his traits and being motivated by either their inverse or their extreme. To start, Parasite is all about satiation. Superman has immense physical powers, but is clearly content with them, and he doesn't seek to gain any more power, for example by subjugating others. Parasite's view on contentment with power is the opposite. He's never satiated, and is always trying to gain more power at the expense of others. Parasite is like a creeping virus always wanting more, while Superman is steady and content. Toyman and Bizarro seem to both represent a dark mirror of Superman's childish qualities. Superman can be considered childish, but in positive and constructive ways, by believing in the good of the world and by being explorative. And note that these are indeed childish traits because children usually have them, but they aren't immature traits. We should have them too. Meanwhile, Toyman is childish as well, but in immature ways. He's preoccupied with toys and fun at the expense of others. And Bizarro is also childish in immature ways. He's clumsy, irresponsible, resistant to learning, throws tantrums, he often wants to be helpful but isn't very competent, and he has to be sent into his own space where he can play and not bother anyone, kind of like a daycare. So Toyman and Bizarro show childishness in bad ways, while Superman shows it in good ways. Brainiac and Superman are opposites in regard to the concept of humanization. Superman sees all living beings as important and valuable. He humanizes everyone. Brainiac dehumanizes everyone. He sees living beings as specimens to be studied, basically turning them into pieces of data for collection. Life is just knowledge for Brainiac, while for Superman life is something special that should be allowed to exist freely in its natural state. Mr. Mxyzptlk is the opposite of Superman in the realm of confidence in one's abilities. Superman has absolutely nothing to prove, and although he can feel inadequate on certain occasions, he's a generally confident person who doesn't need external validation from others. He doesn't ask for recognition, and he feels no injury to his pride when he has to pretend to be the bumbling Clark Kent who embarrasses himself constantly. Mr. Mxyzptlk, on the other hand, is horribly insecure. He constantly feels the need to prove his superiority to Superman by both embarrassing him with his magic and by trying to show that he can't be outsmarted into saying his name backwards. Whenever Superman beats Mxy and sends him back to the fifth dimension, it's a much bigger deal to Mxy than it is to Superman, and that's because Superman feels secure while Mxy feels insecure. It's ironic that this is the case too, because if you go strictly by abilities, Mxy really should be the more confident one, considering he can do anything. His powers dwarf Superman's powers, and that goes to show that a person's sense of security isn't tied much to their actual abilities, which tends to be true in real life. You've probably felt self-conscious about doing something even though you logically knew you were totally competent at doing it. And finally, I think Lex Luthor represents the strongest foil to Superman because he counters him on the topic of self-evaluation, which I believe is one of the most important elements of Superman's story. I could talk for a long time about it, but to put it very briefly, every aspect of Superman's story represents his humility. He considers himself more man than super. He sees himself as an equal to humans, despite his physical abilities. Luthor is the exact opposite. He sees himself as superior to all other humans, based on his intellectual abilities. Superman regards himself as a man, Luthor regards himself as super or superior. Superman is humble, Luthor is arrogant, and this colors every action each of them take.